The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and expensive cologne. My brother Preston stood beside me, perfectly groomed in his tailored suit. Mr. Walsh unfolded the documents with practiced precision. The primary estate, including the family mansion, transfers to Preston Halstead. Everyone nodded like this was expected. Natural. Of course Preston gets everything. Then Walsh turned to me. Didn't quite meet my eyes. And this was left specifically for you, Morgan. He handed me a small brass key. No envelope. No letter. Just cold metal pressing into my palm. Preston leaned close, his voice barely a whisper. Dad always knew who could handle responsibility. His breath smelled like mint gum and victory. I said nothing, just closed my fingers around that key and smiled, because if he thought this was the end of the story, he had no idea what was coming. I'd spent years being dismissed, overlooked, treated like the family failure. But that key in my hand felt different, heavy with possibility, with secrets Preston didn't know existed. The other relatives filed out, offering Preston congratulations and me sympathetic looks, like I was the charity case, the disappointment who got a consolation prize. Let them think that. Let Preston celebrate his victory, because sometimes the best revenge starts with letting people underestimate you completely. I'm Morgan Halstead, the disappointment, the sensitive one, the daughter who felt too much and thought too little. At least, that's what they always said. When I was 12, I heard Mom tell her sister on the phone, Morgan's just not built like Preston. She crumbles under pressure. I was standing right outside the kitchen, frozen with a glass of water in my hand. Mom knew I was there. She didn't lower her voice. That's when I learned something important about my family. They didn't accidentally hurt me. They meant to. Every dismissive comment, every comparison to my perfect brother, every time they forgot my birthday but threw Preston a party. It was all deliberate. So I stopped expecting love and started paying attention instead. Started watching how they operated. Started documenting everything in notebooks I kept hidden. Because even at 12, I knew this story wasn't over. I just had to survive long enough to see how it ended. Preston got the praise, the attention, the assumption of competence. I got the criticism, the doubt, the constant reminder that I wasn't measuring up. But while they were busy celebrating him, I was learning, watching, waiting for the moment when all that attention would finally matter, when being invisible would become my greatest advantage. College was supposed to be my escape, but Preston followed me there too, in spirit if not in body. When my roommate Becca threw me a surprise 20th birthday party, Preston called Mom to complain I was being frivolous with Dad's money. I wasn't. I had a part-time job and paid for everything myself. But Mom called me anyway, her voice tight with disappointment. Your brother's concerned about you. Maybe you should focus more on studying. Preston visited campus once, took me to lunch, told everyone in earshot how he was keeping an eye on his little sister. Made it sound protective. It was surveillance. 2 weeks later, I learned he'd told our parents I was struggling emotionally and needed monitoring. I wasn't struggling. I was thriving. Had a 3.8 GPA and real friends for the first time in my life. But that didn't fit their narrative, so they rewrote it. Preston needed me to be the mess, the problem child, the one who couldn't manage alone. Because if I succeeded, it meant he wasn't special, just lucky. And he couldn't let anyone think that, especially not himself. So he manufactured crises that didn't exist and convinced our parents they were real. After I supposedly had a breakdown at Thanksgiving dinner, meaning I told the truth about Preston lying, they sent me to a wellness retreat. Mom called it therapeutic rest. Preston called it necessary intervention. I called it what it was, exile. But here's what they didn't expect. Therapy actually helped. Not because I was broken, because I finally had someone who believed me. My therapist, Dr. Rivera, listened to my stories and didn't call me dramatic. She called it what it was, systematic gaslighting. You're not crazy, Morgan. You're being conditioned to doubt yourself. That's not the same as being unstable. Those words changed everything. Validated years of feeling like I was losing my mind. I stayed away for 2 years after that retreat. Didn't come home for holidays. Didn't answer Preston's concerned calls. I was building myself back up, piece by piece. And this time, I was building armor instead of just hoping they'd be kinder. I learned about narcissistic family dynamics, about golden children and scapegoats, about how some families need someone to fail so others can succeed. I wasn't broken. I was just assigned the wrong role. And I was done playing it. The mansion looked exactly the same when I returned for Dad's funeral. White columns, perfectly trimmed hedges, the shed in the back garden where Dad used to disappear for hours. I'd always wondered what he did out there. After the will reading, I drove back alone. The staff barely remembered me. They let me wander the grounds without question. I walked to that shed, the brass key heavy in my pocket. The door was unlocked. Inside, garden tools, paint cans, nothing special. But something felt wrong. The back wall didn't sit flush with the others. There was a gap, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. I pressed against it gently. Nothing. Then harder. Click. A panel swung open. Inside was a black envelope with my name written in Dad's handwriting. Just two things inside. Another key and a safety deposit box number. Below that, one sentence in Dad's careful script. If you're reading this, your brother lied about everything. My hand started shaking. Not from fear. From vindication. From the sudden, overwhelming realization that I'd been right all along. Dad knew. He knew what Preston was, what he'd done, and he'd left me proof. Left me a way to fight back when everyone else believed the lies. I sat in my car outside the mansion, hands shaking as I held that envelope. Dad knew. He knew Preston was lying, manipulating, rewriting history. But if he knew, why did he give Preston everything in the will? Unless he didn't. Unless that will reading was just another one of Preston's performances. Another manipulation I'd been too grief-stricken to question. The key felt warm in my palm. Box 447. Jefferson Private Bank. The same bank Dad had used for 40 years. The same bank that still required physical presence and paperwork. No digital access. No easy traces. I started the engine and drove away from the mansion. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't call Mom or send Preston a courtesy text. For the first time in years, I had something Preston didn't know about. Information he couldn't control or spin. And I was going to use every second of that advantage. The game had just shifted. The rules had changed. He just didn't know it yet. And by the time he figured it out, it would be far too late to do anything about it. I smiled despite myself. Maybe even because of myself. After years of being the victim, I was finally becoming something else entirely. Sunday brunch at Mom's condo. The same routine we'd followed for years. Expensive coffee. Passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern. Preston talked about his renovation plans for the mansion. Morgan wouldn't understand the vision, of course. She never appreciated that house. Mom nodded along, spreading jam on her toast like he'd said something profound instead of just cruel. I set down my fork carefully. Let the silence build just long enough. I'm requesting a formal audit of Dad's estate. The silence was instant and complete. Mom's hand froze mid-motion, jam knife suspended in air. Preston's smile flickered for just a second before he recovered. Still obsessed with fairness. Huh, Morgan? Some things never change. You always did have trouble accepting reality. I met his eyes steadily. Didn't blink. Didn't look away. No. Some things do change. Like who has access to Dad's real documents? His actual wishes. Mom's voice came out sharp, almost panicked. This isn't healthy, Morgan. You need to let this go. Your father made his choices. I stood up, gathering my purse with deliberate calm. You're right, Mom. Fraud isn't healthy at all. Neither is forgery. I'll let the court sort out which one applies here. I walked out before either of them could respond. Left them sitting there with their expensive coffee and their expensive lies. People think revenge is dramatic. Screaming matches, thrown objects, slammed doors. But real revenge is quiet. It's sitting across from your brother at dinner, smiling while he talks about his future plans, knowing those plans are about to crumble. It's documentation, timestamps, evidence collected over months and years when everyone thought you were just being paranoid or bitter. I didn't yell at Preston, didn't confront Mom in public. I just called Dad's original estate attorney, Fletcher Brennan, a man with silver hair and sharp eyes who remembered me from childhood. Your father talked about you often, he said when we met at his office downtown. Said you had his mind for details, his eye for patterns. I handed him the key and the envelope. He went to the bank himself the next day, returned 3 days later looking pale and angry in a way that made me sit up straighter. Morgan, this changes everything. Every single thing. Inside the deposit box was the real will, dated 6 months before Dad died, signed with witnesses I recognized, notarized by someone who wasn't my mother, splitting everything 50-50 between Preston and me, equal shares, equal recognition, everything Dad had actually wanted before Preston got to him. The original will sat on Fletcher's desk, legal and undeniable. My name, my inheritance, Dad's actual wishes laid out in black and white. Preston's version had been created 2 weeks after Dad's heart attack, while I was overseas visiting a friend, unreachable and unaware, conveniently absent for the crucial moment. Fletcher compared the signatures with a magnifying glass, his expression growing darker. See this hesitation here? Someone copied his writing. Not perfectly. There's tremor in the lines that shouldn't exist. Your father's signature was always confident, even when he was ill. But what made my stomach turn was the notary stamp. Mom's name, Mom's credentials, Mom's official seal. Dated the exact day I was told Dad was too weak for visitors, too confused to see anyone outside immediate family. They didn't just steal from me. They erased me from Dad's final wishes, rewrote his legacy to fit their preferred story, made me disappear from his life, even in death. I stared at the documents, my hands completely steady now. The shaking had stopped. What do we do next? Fletcher looked up, something like respect in his eyes, maybe even admiration. We file. We expose this, and we win, because this isn't just inheritance law anymore. This is fraud, criminal fraud. I didn't accuse Mom directly, not at first. I just showed up at her condo with coffee, the way she'd taught me. Polite, proper, civil, the way a good daughter should behave. We sat on her balcony overlooking the city, morning sun making everything look deceptively peaceful. I found Dad's original will, I said calmly. Her hand tightened on her cup, just slightly, a tiny tell she couldn't quite control. And the forged version, with your notary stamp, your signature authenticating documents you knew were fake. She didn't flinch, didn't deny it, just sipped her coffee like we were discussing weather or weekend plans. I did what was best for this family, Morgan. Your father was confused toward the end. You weren't stable. Preston could handle the responsibility. Someone had to make the difficult decisions. She said it like it was obvious, like destroying my inheritance and my reputation was just good planning. Sound family management. You always said family first, I replied quietly. But you only ever meant Preston. He was the family. I was just the problem you had to manage. She set down her cup with deliberate precision. He earned it. You didn't. I stood up slowly. No, Mom. He just convinced you I didn't deserve it. There's a difference. I walked away, left her sitting there with her justifications and her lies and the view she'd bought with stolen money. I should have seen it coming. The timing of my supposed breakdown. The urgent family intervention. The wellness retreat that lasted 2 years and cost a fortune. Preston had planned all of it. Fletcher found the emails in Dad's archived files, buried in folders marked with innocuous labels. Preston had written to Dad's attorney 3 weeks before the will was changed. Subject line, urgent family matter, Morgan's mental health. He claimed I was having violent episodes, attaching journal entries from when I was 15, ripped from context and twisted into something dark and concerning. Made my teenage poetry sound like manifestos. CC'd Mom on everything. Made it look like concern instead of calculation. The email was dated 6 days before the revised will appeared. 6 days. This wasn't opportunistic. This was calculated, methodical. Preston had systematically destroyed my credibility so that when the will changed, no one would believe me if I protested. No one would take my side. He didn't just steal my inheritance. He stole my voice first. Made sure no one would listen when I tried to speak. Made sure I sounded crazy if I complained. But he'd underestimated one thing. I kept my own records too, my own documentation, and mine told a very different story than his. This was never about the mansion. I could have sued immediately, gone public, burned everything down in spectacular fashion. But that wasn't the point. Preston's real power didn't come from money or property. It came from reputation, from being the golden child, the responsible one, the son dad trusted with everything important. I needed to dismantle that carefully, methodically, piece by piece, so people couldn't dismiss it as sibling rivalry or bitter jealousy. So the truth would be undeniable. I built the case like I was preparing for war. Because I was. Dates, documents, testimonies, bank records, every lie cross-referenced and verified, every claim supported by evidence that couldn't be disputed or explained away. Fletcher was impressed. You've documented everything. Most people keep emotional records. You kept legal ones. I nodded. Preston taught me that. Be thorough. Leave no loose ends. Cover every angle. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was using the perfectionism he'd always mocked me for lacking. Turned out I'd been plenty thorough. Just not about the things he was watching. My anger made me focused. Not sloppy. Not emotional. Precise. Surgical. And that precision was about to destroy everything he'd built on lies. The letter was simple. Professional. 3 paragraphs requesting an independent estate audit based on evidence of documented fraud. Filed with probate court. Copy sent to Preston and Mom via certified mail. Signatures required. I didn't call them. Didn't warn them. Didn't give them time to prepare or spin. Just sent the paperwork and waited. Preston called within 2 hours. 4 times in a row. Then 6 more times that afternoon. Then Mom called. 5 messages. Each one more desperate than the last. I didn't answer any of them. Let them sit in the uncertainty. Let them wonder exactly how much I knew and how much proof I had. Let them panic while I stayed calm. The next morning, Preston showed up at my apartment building, smiled at the security camera, knocked politely on my door. Morgan, come on. We're family. We don't need lawyers between us. Let's talk about this like adults. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Didn't step aside. Just looked at him. Really looked at him. You're right, Preston. We needed lawyers 10 years ago. When you started lying. When you started rewriting reality. Now it's too late for talking. His smile cracked. Real emotion showing through for once. You're making a mistake. I closed the door in his face. Locked it. No. You already made it. I'm just making sure everyone knows. For days later, an unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. No postage. Hand delivered. Inside, a cashier's check for $150,000. Made out to me. Signed by Preston. No note. No apology. No explanation. Just money. Like I could be bought off. Like this was a simple transaction instead of years of systematic abuse and theft. I sat on my kitchen floor and laughed. Then I tore the check in half. Photographed the pieces on my counter, the tear perfectly centered. Sent the picture to Preston with one message. You think this is about money. That's why you're going to lose. He didn't respond. Not that day. Not the next. Radio silence. But 2 days later, I noticed something. His social media post stopped. The confident updates about business deals and charity galas just ceased. No more carefully curated photos. No more inspirational quotes. For the first time in his life, Preston had gone quiet. And that silence told me everything. He was scared. Actually, genuinely scared. Good. He should be. Because I was just getting started. The check was desperation. The silence was realization. And both meant I was winning. Dad's old accountant reached out through Fletcher. His name was Walter Chun. Quiet man with careful eyes and a precise way of speaking. He'd been one of the original witnesses on Dad's first will. The real one. Your father asked me to keep a copy. Walter told me when we met at a coffee shop downtown. Said if anything ever seemed wrong, I should find you. Not Preston. You specifically. He handed me a folder. Inside were copies of everything. The original will. Dad's financial documents. Records of every property and account. Documentation going back 15 years. Then Walter said something that made my blood run cold. 3 days before your father died, he called me, said he wanted you as primary executor. That Preston wasn't who he'd thought. That he'd made a terrible mistake trusting him with family matters. Dad tried to fix it. Tried to undo whatever Preston had convinced him to do. But he ran out of time. There's something else, Walter said quietly, looking around like someone might be listening. Your father's death. The timing. The suddenness. I think someone needs to look more carefully at what happened that night. At who was there. At what really occurred. Mom's grief after Dad died seemed genuine at the time. The tears. The black clothes. The whispered, he was everything to me at the funeral. But now I had the emails Walter had found. Messages between Mom and Preston from the month before Dad's death. Found in an archive Dad had apparently kept without their knowledge. Preston, we need her out of the picture by the 10th. Can you arrange it? Mom, already scheduled. She'll be medicated and gone within 48 hours. I'll frame it as loving intervention. Family concern. Frame. Like it was a picture. Like sending me away was just set decoration for their real plans. Another message, dated 2 days before Dad's death. Preston, has he signed yet? We're running out of time. Mom, tomorrow. Doctor says his mind is clear enough to be legally binding. I'll have it notarized immediately after. Before he changes his mind again. They weren't mourning Dad. They were executing a plan. A timeline. And I'd been removed specifically so I couldn't interfere. So I couldn't be there when Dad was most vulnerable. Mom's grief wasn't about losing her husband. It was about maintaining control over the narrative. About making sure no one questioned their version of events. About covering tracks. But I was questioning everything now. Every tear. Every moment. Every claim of love. Preston loved being admired. Needed it like oxygen. So when he announced the legacy gala at the mansion, complete with champagne fountains and in memory of Raymond Halstead banners, I bought a ticket. Paid full price. Black dress. Red lipstick. Calm expression. I arrived after the speeches started, but before dinner was served. Slipped into the back of the room. Preston didn't see me at first. Too busy accepting congratulations on his gracious stewardship of Dad's estate. His dedication to family legacy. Then our eyes met across the room. His smile faltered. Just for a second. Then he recovered, but not quite completely. I let him finish his toast. Let him bask in applause. Let him feel like he'd won. Then, just as dessert was being served, Fletcher arrived. Briefcase in hand. Walked directly to Preston and handed him a thick manila envelope in front of 200 guests. Cease and desist. Fraud notification. Will challenge. Audit documentation. Criminal complaint filed with the district attorney. I didn't say a word. Just watched Preston's face drain of color. Watched his hands shake as he opened the envelope. Watched whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Like poison. Then I turned and walked out the front door, leaving him standing there in his expensive suit with his lies exposed. Let him explain that to his admirers. Preston's response was immediate and vicious. He hired a PR firm within 24 hours. Painted me as bitter, unstable, desperate. Claimed I was desecrating our father's memory for attention and money. Posted carefully worded statements on social media about family loyalty and mental health struggles and unfounded accusations. His supporters rallied. Called me terrible names. But I was ready. I released everything to the court. Publicly. Officially. Through proper legal channels that couldn't be dismissed or ignored. The original will. Dad's letter. Medical records proving I'd never needed psychiatric intervention. My therapist's professional statement that I'd been gaslight, not unstable. Emails between Preston and Mom, complete with timestamps. Financial records showing Mom's retirement account had been funded with exactly $200,000 the exact month the fake will was filed. And then the final piece. Security footage from Dad's study. Motion-activated camera Dad had installed years ago, hidden in a bookshelf. Preston didn't know about it, but I did. Dad had shown me once years before. The footage showed Preston entering the study late at night, 2 days after Dad's death, with paperwork. Showed him at Dad's desk, working on something for over an hour, leaving with different papers than he'd brought. No sound, but enough. More than enough. Preston didn't just lie. He'd been caught lying. On camera. With timestamps he couldn't explain away. Mom tried to pivot when the evidence became public. Released her own statement through a lawyer claiming she'd been manipulated by Preston. That she had no knowledge the will was altered illegally. That her only concern had been my well-being and Dad's wishes. But Walter provided records that told a different story. Bank statements showing Mom had received $200,000 in a lump sum, transferred from Dad's personal account. 1 week after the fake will was notarized. Payment for services rendered. She wasn't a victim. She was an accomplice. A paid one. The family friends who'd always supported Preston started going quiet. Stopped defending him on social media. Stopped attending his events. Stopped taking his calls. One by one, the people who'd believed his version of events were seeing the truth. Actually looking at evidence instead of just accepting his word. And Preston's carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time. Social media turned against him. The comments shifted from supportive to suspicious to outright hostile. Mom called me once after everything became public. Her voice tight with barely controlled anger. I hope you're satisfied with destroying this family. I didn't answer. Just blocked the number. Because I didn't need her validation or her anger. I just needed her out of my life. Permanently. The court hearing lasted 3 hours. Preston showed up in his most expensive suit. 3 lawyers beside him, trying to project confidence and control. But the evidence was overwhelming. Undeniable. Dad's original will, authenticated by experts. The forged signatures, analyzed by handwriting specialists. The security footage, time-stamped and verified. Financial records showing the money trail. Witness testimony from Walter about Dad's final wishes. Email documentation proving premeditation and coordination. Preston's lawyer tried, arguing the original will was invalid somehow. That Dad had changed his mind, legitimately. That the timing was coincidental. But Fletcher calmly presented the signature analysis. The timeline of events. The proof of coordination between Preston and Mom. The financial incentive. When Fletcher finished, the judge looked directly at Preston. Her expression was cold. Professional. Disgusted. This court finds clear evidence of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to defraud. The estate will be frozen immediately pending full criminal investigation. All assets transferred under the fraudulent will are hereby invalidated. Preston tried to speak. Started to stand. The judge cut him off with a raised hand. You may face criminal charges, Mr. Halstead. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse. I suggest you consult with your attorney about that reality. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited like sharks. I gave one brief statement, pre-written and memorized. Truth always surfaces eventually. I'm grateful it did before more damage was done. Then I walked away. Let Preston deal with the cameras. Let him explain this to everyone who'd believed him, who'd celebrated him, who'd dismissed me as crazy. Preston went quiet for exactly 1 week after the hearing. Then he posted a video. Soft lighting, humble expression, carefully chosen words about Dad's complicated final months and family misunderstandings, about how emotions ran high and mistakes were made. He said he loved me, that he was grateful the truth had brought clarity to a painful situation, that he hoped we could heal as a family. It wasn't an apology. It was reputation management, damage control. He was using my name like a redemption arc, trying to rewrite himself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of fraud. The golden child fallen from grace, but learning and growing. But the internet moves faster than PR firms. Within hours, comments started appearing under his video. So you did forge the will? Yes or no? Why aren't you returning her share of the inheritance? You called her crazy and unstable 6 months ago. Now you love her. His narrative cracked in real time. People weren't buying the performance. They'd seen the evidence. Read the court documents. Watch the security footage. Everything was public record now. Every screenshot. Every email. Every lie documented and time-stamped. Preston had spent years controlling the story, curating his image, managing perceptions. But this time, the truth was louder than his carefully crafted words. And he couldn't talk over it. Couldn't charm his way out. Couldn't rewrite reality fast enough to stay ahead of the facts. Mom sent one final text message 2 weeks after the hearing. I hope this was worth destroying your family. Your father would be ashamed. I stared at those words for a long time. Read them over and over. Then I deleted them without responding. Didn't type out the angry reply I wanted to send. Didn't engage. Because she still didn't understand. Would never understand. I hadn't destroyed the family. They had. Years ago, when they chose favoritism over fairness, lies over truth, control over love, when they made me the scapegoat for Preston's failures and insecurities. Preston lost his board positions within a month. 3 nonprofits quietly removed him from leadership roles. A tech company postponed indefinitely their consulting agreement. His name disappeared from charity event sponsors. His social circle shrank as people quietly distanced themselves. Not dramatically, just gradually. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unreturned. Group chats went silent when he posted. That's how it works at that level. No confrontation. No public denouncement. Just erasure. Quiet removal from circles of influence and prestige. Meanwhile, people started approaching me differently. No more pity in their eyes. No more condescension in their voices. You're really strong, someone said at a coffee shop. What you did took courage. But I wasn't strong in the way they meant. I was just done. Done accepting less. Done believing their version of me. Done being quiet about abuse just to keep the peace. I went back to the bank one more time to close out the safety deposit box. Box 447. The key still felt warm in my hand after all these months. Inside was one more envelope I'd overlooked the first time. Tucked beneath the will and the letter, easy to miss. This one was sealed with tape and wax, like Dad had wanted to make absolutely sure it wasn't opened accidentally. Inside was a longer letter, written in Dad's increasingly shaky handwriting. Morgan, if you're reading this, then Preston succeeded in rewriting everything. I should have stopped him years ago. Should have protected you better from your mother's favoritism and his manipulation. I failed you in that. I see that now, though it took me far too long. But I saw you. Saw how you noticed things others missed. How you remembered details no one else paid attention to. How you understood people in ways Preston never could because he only saw what benefited him. I left you the key because I knew you'd find the truth. You always saw through the performances, through the lies we told ourselves and each other. I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner. Sorry I let them convince me you were the problem. You never were. I hope this doesn't break you. I hope it frees you. You deserve freedom. You always did. Love, Dad. There was a photo too. Me at 6 years old, sitting on Dad's shoulders at the beach, both of us laughing. Real smiles. Real joy. Before everything got complicated. Before Preston's jealousy and Mom's favoritism poisoned everything good in our family. The mansion sat in my name now after months of legal proceedings. Legally. Officially. Undeniably. Preston had already moved out, taking only his personal belongings under court supervision. Mom had sold her condo and moved across the state to live near her sister. Neither of them spoke to me anymore. I walked through the empty rooms one last time before making my final decision. Remembered childhood moments in these halls. Good and bad. Birthday parties and holiday dinners. Fights and reconciliations that never quite took. But mostly I felt nothing. The house wasn't a home. Never had been, really. It was a monument to secrets. To lies. To the cost of keeping up appearances. To everything toxic families hide behind closed doors and perfect facades. I called the director of Haven House, a women's shelter that had been fundraising for years to expand their services. They needed space for more families escaping abuse, more safety, more hope, more room for women rebuilding their lives. I handed her the deed at her office, papers already signed. It's yours, for women who need protection, who need to know someone sees them. She cried, hugged me, thanked me over and over. I didn't cry, because the mansion had never protected me. But now it could protect someone else, someone who needed it more. That felt right, like turning poison into medicine, like making something good from something that had only ever hurt me. Preston had fought so hard for that house, committed fraud, destroyed relationships, risked prison, and I'd just given it away to help strangers. There was no dramatic final confrontation with Preston, no tearful reconciliation at the mansion gates, no apology that would somehow make years of abuse acceptable. He just disappeared from my life as completely as he'd tried to erase me from Dad's will and family history. The last I heard, he'd moved to a different city, taken a new job, lower profile, smaller ambitions. The news articles about the estate fraud had faded from search results, buried under newer scandals. His name didn't appear in social announcements anymore. He'd become what he'd always feared most. Ordinary, forgettable, just another middle-aged man with nothing special to distinguish him. Meanwhile, I planted a tree in the mansion's garden before handing over the keys to Haven House. A cherry blossom, Dad's favorite. New roots in old soil. New life from old pain. New growth from decay. As I drove away that final time, I didn't look back. Didn't need to. This was never about winning against Preston. Never about revenge in the way most people think of it. It was about remembering I wasn't crazy. That my reality had been real all along. That every doubt they planted, every time they called me too sensitive or dramatic or unstable, it had all been projection. Manipulation. I never needed their approval to know my worth. Never needed Preston's validation or Mom's love. The key Dad left me didn't unlock a door or a box. It unlocked the truth. And in the end, that was worth more than any mansion. More than any inheritance. More than any family that only loved conditionally. Because I finally got back what they tried to take. My voice. My story. My right to exist without apologizing. Myself. And that was everything.